Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, January 5th, 2019, and we're going to look at a 2020 presidential election prediction between Senator Kamala Harris from the state of California versus, of course, the incumbent President Donald Trump. So this election prediction has definitely been requested very heavily. Julian Castro is pending his announcement, and in just a couple of days, Kamala Harris is probably going to announce within the next couple of days. She said she would after the holiday season ends. Elizabeth Warren has already announced she's running for president, and there are plenty of other candidates that possibly could run for the 2020 election. And Harris is probably one of the better ones for the Democratic Party in terms of how they want to push forward in the future in terms of their agenda. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say she's the best candidate to win for them in 2020, especially looking at a number of other candidates who have a lot more strengths. But if we're looking at the future of the Democratic Party, they're definitely going to be trying to appeal to those incoming minority voters, whether it comes from Texas, North Carolina, Georgia, down in the South with a heavy African-American population, or across the Sun Belt with a heavy Latino population. When it comes down to it, they're going to try to push for someone who can really represent what the future Democratic Party is going to look like. Because if you look at past Democratic presidential candidates, only one was really notable, and that was President Barack Obama, first African-American president. Before then, Kerry, Gore, Clinton. Okay, go down the list of another, I guess, area where there are some failed candidates that were all fitting the same scale. But she would be the first African-American woman. Not the first woman. Hillary Clinton was the first woman. But this time it would be the first African-American woman, and that would probably be the last first for a while. And when you just look at that, it seems like she has, the vote that you need. The age gap, not the age gap, the gender gap in terms of voting, more women voting for Harris, increased minority turnout because she is African-American. She's able to bring out African-American voters. That's just a thing that happens. But maybe she could be a little bit different. Maybe America's not ready for this drastic type of change. They didn't seem too ready for Hillary. And I get it. There were a number of other things involved. But who's saying other things won't get involved with Kamala Harris running? Nobody's going to say she's going to be scandal-free. The Republican Party will undoubtedly find something to use against her, as the Democratic Party would do to the GOP. It's just plain politics. And if they weren't necessarily ready for a female candidate, what makes you so sure they're going to be ready for an African-American female candidate? And again, it's not just identity politics. That's one factor out of hundreds, but it's something to note. This will be a first, but would it also be the last for a while if it's not a win? Which is why a lot of Democrats are turning to people like Biden or Sanders. People are very reluctant to endorse Elizabeth Warren. We look at Dianne Feinstein. She just endorsed Joe Biden over Kamala Harris, and Biden hasn't even announced his campaign yet. Neither has Harris, but she has put a lot more speculation into it in the recent weeks than Joe Biden has. So, again, the differences are just there, but that's enough about the candidates themselves. That's enough about the primary season. That's enough about other candidates, as I just said. Let's go ahead and move on into the general election. So we're going to do this in poll closing format from 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. I will be filling in every state as you guys asked me to in my last video, but I'm going to start off with the safe states. So when you look at the safe states, we see states like South Carolina, Kentucky, and Indiana. Now, these states are safe states because they just have been solidly Republican for a very long time, and overall, there's no real reason why they would flip. The only argument you could make is that Indiana and South Carolina might get less than that safe margin, just narrowly go into the likely margin. But for Indiana, I'm going to keep that one in the Trump column. And South Carolina, I may reconsider coming back to once we pass through all the safe states. West Virginia joins safe states for the President of the United States. And then we can characterize, we didn't characterize Virginia yet. We did not, but it needs to be a toss-up state, so it goes into the yellow column. And then Vermont goes into the 3 electoral votes for Kamala Harris. Then we go into 7:30 with West Virginia going to Trump. Ohio and North Carolina become toss-up states. And then 8 p.m. rolls around. We just go ahead and characterize the states. I don't know why I forgot Georgia, but of course that one's just a toss-up, especially with an election like this. We go up into the Northeast. This is dominating, I guess you could say, Democratic territory. Illinois comes in, and I believe New Hampshire's a toss-up, Maine, and then the 2nd district, and I think Pennsylvania may be the last state in 8 p.m. Then we move over to 8:30, Arkansas, and then we go over into 9 p.m., Louisiana, Texas, Kansas. Actually, Texas, not now. Nebraska, 2nd district, we will characterize as a toss-up. South Dakota, North Dakota, and Wyoming. Arizona's a toss-up state. New Mexico goes in the Democratic column. Colorado goes into the Democratic column. These are 2 states that are pretty Democratic just based off the 2018 election results and also looking at them for 2020, definitely good for the Democratic Party. There's no real reason why they should lose there unless they have a really bad candidate. New York goes into the Democratic column, and then, of course, the 3 Rust Belt states go into the toss-up column. Then we can start moving over into 10 p.m. Utah, Montana go to President Trump. Iowa goes into the toss-up column. Nevada goes into the toss-up column. 11 p.m., Idaho, Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii go to Elizabeth. Whoa, that came out of nowhere. Kamala Harris, and then Alaska goes to Donald Trump, and that puts him at the margin with 125 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 197. So looking at this map alone, she's clearly in the lead, but that leaves 216 electoral votes up for grabs. And some of these bigger states do need to be characterized about right now. I mean, these are states that are going to be likely states, so why not call them right now? So Texas is the first likely state to go for the GOP. I don't think Kamala Harris is going to really bring out Latino voters like you might think. Not that many people think she would do a really good job at that. African American voters is where I really think she can tap into in terms of getting them out to vote fully. But Texas, for right now, I'm going to characterize as a likely GOP state. Donald Trump is going to do pretty well here, especially looking at 2018. Yes, the Democratic Party did do better. But it's not a real indication for the presidential election. I mean, yes, it should narrow down, but keep in mind this was someone like Beto O'Rourke running in the Senate election. The governor's race was fine for the GOP. The House races were fine for the GOP, and Donald Trump will probably win about around the same margin that he won in back in 2016, maybe just a little less. Moving over to another likely state, I'm trying to see if there's any other likely states that I can characterize as likely for the GOP, but until we get there, Vermont I think would be likely for Kamala Harris. Vermont, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I'm thinking right now. First of all, I'm sick, but I didn't mention that. I don't know if you guys can tell through my voice, but yeah, I'm very congested, so whatever. But I guess it's just throwing off my ability to identify states. But Virginia, is a likely state for the Democratic Party. Going up to Maine, though, I'm not so much seeing this being a likely margin in Maine at large. I would actually characterize it as a lean margin, and I would give President Trump the 2nd district into the lean margin. I don't think Kamala Harris is going to be able to reflip that district for the Democratic Party. That puts Trump at 164 electoral votes and her at 212. Now, looking at the remaining states, it's pretty much the North, the Rust Belt, the South, and then the Sun Belt. I think I just characterized all parts of the country except for some areas like near Montana. But there are a couple of states out that we do need to characterize right now, like states like Arizona, which, again, I don't think Kamala Harris is going to do the best job at bringing out voters there. So that 11 electoral votes goes to the president. We go over to Nevada, though. I do think that one will stay in the Democratic column. Just history tells us that. She's from the West Coast. I really think she could be able to hold on to those voters there, putting her at 218 to Donald Trump at 175. We go over to the Rust Belt areas. We're not going to see Iowa, Ohio, and the 2nd district from Nebraska go into the Harris column. I mean, these states alone have held Republican identities in the past, 2018, 2016, 2014. These states for right now in the 2nd district. If the 2nd district, number one, couldn't flip in 2018, there's very few candidates that actually could flip it in a presidential election. And I don't think, even though I do think African-American turnout will bring the margin down to a lean margin, I wouldn't exactly say that it flips in favor of Kamala Harris, especially with her not having that same Obama type appeal that he definitely had, or Bernie Sanders type appeal, which makes those states more competitive than before. But then we go into the Rust Belt. She's going to do pretty well in a state like Minnesota. She's probably going to win that one, still put it in the lean column. She's probably going to hold on to New Hampshire. I think that one's going to be in the Democratic column. Pretty solidly. I'm going over to North Carolina and Georgia. These are 2 states I'm going to characterize as lean GOP states. And why, you might ask? Well, number one, I do think she's going to do a pretty good job at bringing out African-American voters in these 2 states alone. But I don't know if it's enough to flip them. There would be a number of circumstances where it does narrow down to less than 1%, less than 2%, but not so much flipping it. I mean, Obama barely flipped it in 2008, and that was with a lot more momentum. If you look at Georgia, Stacey Abrams did not flip it in 2018. Clinton did not flip it in 2016. But Georgia and North Carolina, I would narrowly put into the Trump column. Definitely going to be one of the more narrower elections in terms of these 2 states. This is probably the best matchup for the Democrats if they were aiming at just winning in North Carolina and Georgia. But again, I just don't think it's going to happen completely. Florida, I would characterize as a Trump state. I mean, this state has held on to its Republican identity within the Democratic wave year. And again, I do think that a candidate could possibly flip it, but I'm not going to see. I do not think Kamala Harris can flip this state. But for the Rust Belt, I'm going to I think I'm comfortable enough characterizing all of the Rust Belt states that are left as lean Democratic states. And that officially makes Kamala Harris the next president of the United States of America, with 278 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 260. The Rust Belt states alone, these are states that Donald Trump won by less than 1% in 2016, really do not have a too high approval rating of him here. If we replicate what happened in 2018, it would be a bloodbath for him. But right now, I think it will narrow down against the Democrats' favor, but still, they're going to win in these states with someone like Kamala Harris, especially with those inner cities, which didn't turn out for Hillary Clinton, possibly could turn out, and that I do think would turn out for Kamala Harris. So, thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.